G'day Darkrealmers, it's horror author and illustrator Michael J. Elliott here with you again. And today I'm going to be giving you the lowdown on Universal Studios' Dark Universe, okay, and what it means for we horror fans. Hey, if this is your first trip to the Diaries, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. If you want to keep up with the best in horror, content, creepypasta, trivia, and the world of horror, hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so you'll always be up to date with the world of horror. Okay, Darkrealmers, the Dark Universe sounds fascinating, so I'm going to explain about it right now. Yeah. Well, Darkrealmers, the Dark Universe isn't a team-up effort between Universal Studios and Stephen Hawking's or NASA looking for black holes. No, 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 no. The Dark Universe is Universal's way of rebooting their classic franchises. Now, back in the 30s, 40s, and to maybe a lesser extent in the 50s, Universal Studios was known as the home of monsters because they were the studios that gave us Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, and Creature from the Black Lagoon. And that's not also including things like Son of Dracula, Bride of Frankenstein, The Invisible Man Returns, all those sort of movies. So there's a lot there to reboot. Now, this is this is Universal's attempt to reboot and rejig those classic monster movies for a brand new audience. And I applaud that. It's a great way to get a new generation of moviegoers interested in the classic movies. And their first attempt, unfortunately, wasn't really successful. Hands up, how many of you saw The Mummy? You, right at the back. Yes. Oh, don't be embarrassed. You're not alone. You were one of the few people who did. Now, unfortunately, The Mummy didn't do well at the box office. And there's a number of reasons for that, Darkrealmers. The first one was that The Mummy was up against some really stiff competition. We had any movie was basically going to find itself struggling when you're up against Guardians of the Galaxy 2. That movie is just a juggernaut. And the hype, the expectations, it was just a fantastic, opening for a movie, which you would expect because Marvel's openings tend to dominate the box office. Then on the second weekend, it faced the might of Wonder Woman, which turned out to be a huge success. So that was that problem. The next problem they also faced was that, well, people weren't terribly impressed with the style over substance. And by that I mean, look, every movie uses CGI. You need to for big action scenes and so forth. But when that dominates the movie, it tends to distract a little bit from the storyline. Now, you compare The Mummy with the Boris Karloff original, and that was more atmospheric. That was more the female in danger, the man who's traversed thousands of years to be with the woman he loves, and The Mummy 2017 tended to be more of your action genre, leaping out of planes, huge sandstorms coming and things like that. Don't get me wrong, those things are good, and they have their place in movies. But as a reboot for a classic movie, it's sort of very, very different. Okay, another reason The Mummy didn't do as well is star power. Now, Tom Cruise is still a huge star, but his pulling power is a bit on the wane in Hollywood. He's huge in Japan, but there's not that same intensity of people saying, wow, another Tom Cruise movie, let's go, let's go. And one of the reasons for that is Darkrealmers is that they've actually conducted polls, and they've found that today's moviegoers aren't terribly impressed with, star power. The person in the movie doesn't tend to pull them into the cinemas as much as what the movie itself does. And there's a subtle shift too going on in the world of entertainment, because big stars aren't necessarily bound to Hollywood anymore. For example, you'll see a lot of big name stars making original production movies for streaming services like Netflix and Amazon. For an example, Brad Pitt just made one for Netflix, okay? So there's a shift away from being tied to Hollywood, so forth. Now, of course, Hollywood's always going to exist, and we're always going to need Hollywood for the movies. But that's another reason. Another reason is that people were maybe a little bit sick of the whole. Now, it's been a while since we've had a Mummy franchise, but a little bit tired of this sort of, creature from the past. Now, one of the problems the movie faced was that they set it in modern day. And the whole thing about the Mummy, the original Mummy, and to a lesser extent some of, independent movies that were made along that genre, were that they were set in the time of what do I call the golden age of exploration and discovery, and that was basically in the 20s. And to have a movie set in that time period where you've got people like Lord Carnarvon who excavated Tutankhamun's tomb, great stuff, okay? And even the Brendan Fraser series, The Mummy, was set in that time frame. So it gave you a sense of authenticity, okay? But having a movie dealing with a mummy and an ancient curse set in today's world, where you've got Tom Cruise jumping out of planes, and you've got GPS, and you've got Wi-Fi and all those sort of things, tends to dilute the sort of atmosphere of the movie, okay? Now, that's not to say that the movie was bad in any way. It did have flaws, obviously. All movies do, on some level. But what makes you wonder is Universal is starting its whole reboot, its whole Dark Universe series with The Mummy. Now, that's, well, to use the old phrase, counting your chickens before they're hatched. It's a bit like basing, let's say, okay, you've written a series of books, and you're planning a whole series of books, and you're already writing the second one before you even know how the first one's going to do, whether it's going to be a success or not. So we've got that problem. Now, one of the other issues that the Universal Studios is going to face is how to reboot and re-engineer the classic monsters for a new generation. Now, everyone knows Boris Karloff as the monster. That has become iconic. That whole creature makeup, it's become part of pop culture, Darkrealmers. Now, attempts to make other Frankenstein movies haven't been so successful. There was the Kenneth Branagh version, which I loved, which apparently no one else did because it didn't do well. But the fact that Robert De Niro played the monster was just awesome, in my view. So there's the problem that they need to keep true to the roots of the story and their original, while at the same time making it relevant, okay? And that same thing applies to Dracula too. Now, we're all a little bit jaded with the whole vampire thing, okay? We had Twilight, which went on for like 50 years, or was it? or it might have just seemed like 50 years, okay? Then, of course, on television, we had the Vampire Diaries and other sort of vampire-related films. Then we had Dracula, The Untold Story, which I thought was really good, a really good take on the whole Dracula thing. Then we had Bram Stoker's Dracula, which was starred Gary Oldman, and that was great. So there's been a few interpretations of Dracula, so they need to make sure that they get it right, because it's very hard to serve up. Doesn't matter how exquisite the dish is, it's hard to serve it up when the public's got a jaded palate. So what's coming up in the franchise? Well, we know definitely that there's The Invisible Man is on the works, okay, and that'll be very, very interesting to see. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the second one in the Dark Universe series, but pre-production's already well underway with that movie. Script treatments are being written, plot lines are being formulated, and so forth. Now, you'd think that, you know, having a classic book by H.G. Wells would be all the plot you needed, but no, Hollywood tends to like to go its own way a little bit, okay? So that'll be interesting. Now, there's other works out there. Like I said, Dracula's coming, Frankenstein. It's maybe a little bit doubtful at this stage whether we'll see Mummy 2 or not, okay? But it's going to be very interesting over the next few years, Darkrealmers, to see the new treatment by Universal for their classic monsters, okay, which they hold very dear and very tight to the purse strings too, I might add. Okay, well, that's a brief explanation of what's coming up with the Dark Universe. I hope you're looking forward to it as much as I am, and I hope they do it well. I really do, Darkrealmers. Now, as soon as I hear some more news about the movies coming up and any other tidbits, I'll let you know in a new video, okay? And I'll give you a Dark Universe update. Well, that's it from me, Darkrealmers. I hope you've enjoyed this preview of what's coming up for you in the world of horror in terms of movies. I'll be back with you again very soon, and if you've liked this, please give us a thumbs up and leave a comment, and let me know which particular classic monster are you keen to see rebooted, okay? I'd be very interested to see your choices. So that's it from me now, Darkrealmers, horror author Michael J. Elliott. Until next time, stay in the light, and I'll see you again very, very soon. Bye for now.